everyone, happy holidays. All right, so I want to talk today about, so recently I did a video where I was saying that the number one issue causing like 98% of your problems in business is communication. Basically, anything that can seem completely unrelated to communication when you look at an issue, once you start breaking it down and kind of digging into it, when you ultimately get to the source, it usually ends up being communication at the end of the day. It can, like I said, can seem totally unrelated, but it ends up being communication anyway. So I put the acronym out, C.P.R, as a solution to your communication issues and how you can really be set free from your business and solve a lot of issues at the head if you use C.P.R in your business. So C.P.R stood for culture, productive processes, and recognition. So I decided to break those three down. So today I'm going to talk about C, which is culture, and how you can utilize that in your business. So let's talk through that real quick. Oops. I was going to write C.P.R. So culture. So culture is really... culture is, the way I put it, and if you've watched a video before where I did a talk about culture, but I always say culture is to a business as a personality is to a person. So culture is really defining what's important to you, the kind of qualities that you want your people to have and embody, and how you want to go about conducting your business and being really, really crystal clear about that. So let's talk about some of the ways that you do that. So one of the ways that you do it is through core values. Okay, so implementing core values, really talking through them, thinking about what is really, really important to your business, and how it's going to shape how you conduct your business. If something doesn't really affect how you run your business, then you might not want to include it as a core value. But, when I think of core values, core values I've been involved with in the past are things like education, wanting to have employees that believe in educating themselves, whether they are, doing school or they're reading books or they're doing whatever, just something that they're, it has a lot to do with self-improvement, which are the kind of people that I really want working for me. People who are always trying to be better than they were yesterday. So, education was always a big core value. It's one I've kept in my own company. Things like the last company I worked with, we used grit, and the reason we used grit was because it was such a demanding workplace, and it was just something that we really, after several years, when we redid our core values, after a couple years after we had first instituted them, we redid them, and grit was one that it was like, the reality is you have to have grit to work here. So I think it's a necessity to put it out there as like, hey, you know what? This is who we are. Because if you can't hack it here, you won't make it. If you cannot like come in ready to bust some serious ass. So, but either way, like, so you really have to look at who are you as a company? What do you expect of your team? I always have kept gratitude as a core value. My former employer and myself totally agreed on that. I used to say to potential new hires the first time I would interview them, I always said to them very like bluntly, I was like, if gratitude is the hallmark of the people who work here. If you are not grateful, you will not work here, period. That's how serious I was about gratitude and am about gratitude is, we all need to be grateful because we are all very blessed and privileged in our own ways. I can bet a lot of money that if you're sitting here watching this video that you are probably really blessed in your life, and so you can definitely be grateful for a lot of things. But either way, core values are really essential to being crystal clear, and this is a method of communication. It's being clear about what you expect of the people who work for you. So this is not something to be like all willy-nilly or, oh, someone said we need to have core values, so let's like slap some crap together and post it on our wall and forget about it, which is what a lot of people do with their core values and with their culture. And that's not how they work. That's not how they're going to work to fix your business. So slapping them up on a wall is not going to fix things. But being hyper intentional and focusing on them, and I'll talk about how we do that in a few, but having these is really essential. And talking to people about it. You know, talking to, like I said, I would make a speech to new hires and I would talk about every core value and why it was a core value in our company and what we expected of people to work there. So that's part of the purpose of core values, is to be crystal clear with people about your expectations of them as human beings, as people working in your company. So another big one is, and this one can be tough. So mission statement. So your mission statement is, again, like I said, this one can be kind of tough because your mission statement becomes a very well-rounded picture of what you do as a business. So it's not a simplistic view of how you run your business or what kind of service you provide. So it's not the surface value. I'll put it that way. It's about what are you doing, like deep down, you know, when you really dig into the whole of the business, what is your mission as a business? You know, our mission statement in my previous company involved who we employed. It involved, you know, what we meant to do for them, what we meant to do for the community, and, you know, ultimately what we did for our customers. So, you know, your mission statement is a very well-rounded view of what you're trying to do overall as a business. So it can be really tough and elusive sometimes. I don't know if you can read that. I guess you can, but it can be somewhat elusive. And so it took us several years before we finally had enough clarity to define our mission statement. One resource that I used, that I discovered recently, was called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, who is amazing. And he actually can help a lot with creating your mission statement and getting a lot of clarity on that in a lot shorter time than, you know, a couple of years. So definitely something to consider if you guys are struggling with coming up with a mission statement for your business. So that was Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. That's a book. So these two things are two huge aspects of who you are, and how you kind of utilize these is what I call the 3 R's. So one major one is reinforce. So reinforces, you know, like a lot of people, like I mentioned before, they slap this crap up on their wall. So you have your core values kind of everywhere. That's one way to reinforce. Definitely like a subconscious, you know, having your core values out there. But other ways are things like theming, you know, Ritz-Carlton themes every single day to a different core value. So that is definitely one way to go about it. If a worldwide company can do it, anybody can do it. But I know that seems really cumbersome, but at the same time, Ritz-Carlton is dead serious about their culture, and that is how they deliver world-class service to their guests. So take a page from their book and think about that for a minute. You know, if Ritz-Carlton's doing that, something you might want to consider. But a lot of people theme other things. You know, we used to theme quarters. We would have challenges. You know, we would try to recognize people, which actually is the next R, but, you know, recognizing people for exemplifying core values, all sort of things. So, you know, reinforcing can be done in many, many different ways. And how much you dig into it really is going to affect how much impact it really has on your bottom line and on your company overall. So, I really recommend, as much as you can stand to reinforce, that you do that. So the next one is I already said it, but recognizing. So recognizing when your employees are doing an outstanding job exemplifying, you know, one of your core values. So, you know, when you see that, don't miss the opportunity to acknowledge that person. you know, and especially if you have the opportunity to acknowledge them in a formal setting, or I'm sorry, a public setting where other people are going to see that. This is a really, really powerful way to continue to reinforce your culture. So don't miss this opportunity. Recognize people when they're exemplifying your culture. Don't just expect that. Reward it. So this last one, I've done different ones, but this one I just like to say, repeat. So once you establish your processes and things like that, and you really have a method to being intentional about your culture, then repeat. Continue to reinforce. Continue to recognize. Reward. You know, don't overlook when people are exemplifying your core values, because that's what's driving your company towards its success. So don't miss the opportunity. Make sure you're paying attention. So when you see people who are just, you know, I've had employees who were just so friggin' grateful for, you know, everything. I mean, they were just the most gracious person, and we couldn't help it. I mean, you don't want to, it sounds funny to reward somebody for being grateful, but man, they were just so gracious, and they were so thankful and so humble, that we couldn't help, like, they were like the epitome of that core value. And so we couldn't ignore it. You know, it's kind of, it was like, well, it's kind of funny to acknowledge that, but it was just like, you know, damn it, I wish I was as good as you. I got to recognize you for this. You are awesome. Here's a friggin' gift card. Go out and have dinner with your family, whatever. But just recognizing it. And of course, you know, just never letting it go. Create processes around this. Create systems to this. Make sure that you're being hyper intentional about this, because this is a huge way that you set yourself free from your business. Because when people know what is expected, when people know what the ideals are behind decisions, then they can make the decisions without having to track you down and ask you all the time. And remember, I've talked about this many times, give them the room to make the decisions. Empower them to make decisions. Empower them to make mistakes. And you will reap tremendous rewards from it. So that's my culture talk for today. Next one, I'm going to be coming back with productive processes. So that one, there's probably going to be a lot of notes. I'm going to try to write quick for that one, and don't miss it. Again, like, share, comment. I want to hear from you guys. I read everything. I'll respond. I love talking to you guys. Talk again soon. Bye.